We've done a lot with CSS. We've streamlined, we've added CSS into multiple lines, we've consolidated the multiple lines we've made, we've looked at cross-browser compatibility. We are ready to go. We're ready to drop our CSS in production. We're ready to walk away and actually cheer because we've done an amazing job and amazing work. But there's one thing that we should do just in case to make things a little bit faster. You notice that during this video series, I've been talking about performance. I've been talking about making things faster. One of the important things about CSS is it might actually be a performance inhibitor. Meaning, if you do piles and piles and piles and piles of CSS, what you're inherently going to do is make a really, really long text file that's got to get loaded in. If you use font face, if you use multiple fonts, you're going to add files that download more and more and more into the cache. And that's what's really going to slow us down. In the browser, you've got sites that have CDNs, content delivery networks, sites that are optimized for performance. So there's stuff on our end that we can do that automatically is a really, really simple game changer. There's like one technique that I'm going to show you, and then there's a way we can test it. So the first technique is what we're going to call minifying. And minifying is a really, really simple technique. What it is it gets rid of all the junk and all the line breaks in your file. So you take this file that, let's say, here's my main.css, I've added some font face, it's 32 rows. Imagine if I had a full style guide, a large CSS of everything, of multiple pages. I might even decide to break these down into multiple CSS files, but in this case, we might end up being in 200 to 300 to 400 rows of code. So what minification does is it removes all the line breaks. It actually puts them down on one line and makes it easier for to crunch the file size down smaller. Every time you add a line break, that actually file gets larger and larger and larger. Every time you actually have extra spaces and extra characters, that makes it larger and larger and larger. Things like the spaces here, things like the spaces in between lines make things larger. So inherently what minification does is it adds it in one line. It would be super annoying for you to do over and over again. It would actually kill yourself because I don't know anyone who does it by hand. There's amazing resources. One is called the CSSminifier.com, where all I'm going to do is copy my CSS, drop it in the minification process, and then I'll get something back. But before I'm ready to do that, I'm going to have to clean up my own site. One of the things that I want to do before I minify my text is I'm not going to actually be editing the minified file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have two CSS files. I'm going to have my working CSS, the one that has all the indents, the one that's color-coded, the one that has my comments here to make it easier for us to read. This is the one that we're going to use to edit and change. When we're ready to go for production, I'm just going to copy my CSS file. I'm going to drop it in a new document. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of a lot of these comments first. I don't want these in the minification because then they get moved as extra characters. What I want to do is I want to get rid of all of these notes, everything that you saw me that was really, really helpful to tell me whether it worked or it doesn't work. This is adding actually a lot of extra space. So let's actually get rid of as much of this extra space as humanly possible. Let's make sure this is really, really nice and tight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these lines of code as well here, these lines of commented out code, so that we can actually make it really, really easy to read. So again, this is the process where we're going to actually try to clean everything up. I have everything. I might even get rid of a break. I don't have to worry about getting rid of anything. Now I'm ready to minify. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to that wonderful website. I'm going to drop it in, and I'm going to minify it. And now look what happens. It gets all consolidated down into one line. I'm not done yet. I can actually use select all. I copy this back. I paste it back, and now it is in one line, and the file is going to be much smaller. So let's save this. I'm going to put it in my CSS directory for right now, and I'm actually going to tag it -min. You'll actually see this in many other multiple pages where you'll see -min, we'll see /min, _min. This is the minified file. I'm going to save it. I'm going to actually take a look at the files in our project just to see if we made any difference. And you notice that we actually cut the size in half. We went from 900 bytes to 500. Imagine if this was 1 megabyte, because we had piles and piles of code, this would have brought it down to half a megabyte. So that in itself is an amazing cost savings, especially for size. When we're looking at trying to make mobile sites and desktop sites as small as possible, this is a tiny little technique that we'd want to actually use. If I really, really wanted to, have a good time here, I would actually go into my reset and do the same thing. I'd do reset min. I'd actually open it up again in my text editor so that we can actually get it working. Again, I delete whatever notes we have that were just there for browser notes or for me to edit. I copy it. I go back to the website. I paste it. I minify it. Select all again and copy it. Nice and minified. I save the reset.minification. I come back, and now I've taken 250, or about 240 bytes off it. That's really great. I'm sure there's other comments or notes in there that it would actually helpful me to delete. Even things that I'm not using. One of the things that you want to do as you're clearing comments, if you see code that you're not using, just take it out, because it's going to be in the minified. In order for us to use it, again, we're not done yet. We actually want to go to our index. We want to actually go back to the index file and make sure, this is critical, that we actually change the file type. That will drive you crazy if you're not. So if you're ready to go to production, you want to go to production with your -min files. Once we have it, and you know that you've done a great job, we also want to look at testing it just to make sure. There's a couple of free services out there and free sites. Again, always talking about available online references. One of them is called webpagetest.org. And what it does is it's actually, a collaboration of multiple different brands and companies in the web performance space. What you would do is you would upload your site to a QA environment, a staging environment. I would say whatever .qa.adrian.com. You would actually choose your browser. In this case, I would choose on Chrome. You could choose a mobile device or an IE device if you don't have one desktop handy. And you could choose any location. If you know that the server is going to be in Chicago or Miami, I would choose somewhere in the middle of the country and then start test. What you get back is actually a big long file like this. This is what's called a HAR file. It's actually a waterfall chart. So a waterfall chart literally shows all the page elements in waterfall. But you know what? Really, your concern is two things. One, you want to look at what the load time is, and the overall load time is going to be gigantic for a page like this. I just did a hometown favorite, Boston.com, where I check my morning news. It's 16 seconds. That's really big. But really what I care about as a CSS web developer is I want to look at how my CSS code worked. So I'm going to look at my CSS. In this case, Boston.com has multiple CSS files. If I was responsible for coding one of those files, I looked at it and said, hey, that file is 126 milliseconds, 327 milliseconds. That CSS developer is getting a high five right now. It's better to be in the milliseconds than it to be in the seconds. So this is where minification works. This is where we actually can do a couple of really quick techniques to just check our files, that our files are as compressed, as actually streamlined. Hopefully by the time you get to this phase, you've already gotten rid of excess comments, excess CSS. You've actually gotten rid of, you've consolidated a lot of your tags. You've consolidated a lot of your code. This should be a good way to check to make sure that you've done a great job. Enjoy. Thank you for working together with me to actually have a lot of fun in CSS, and go code.